Teen suicides are worryingly on the increase. Research by the South African Depression and Anxiety Group shows that 9% of teenage deaths were by suicide. In Gauteng schools alone, over 40 pupils have taken their own lives since the beginning of this year. But for more on this story, we're now joined by the director of the Teddy Bear Foundation, Dr. Shaheda Omar. And Doc, thank you so much for your time. A very warm good morning to you. I think quite concerning that we're having this discussion that 40 pupils this year alone have died by suicide. Doc, I mean, what does the data tell us in terms of what informs this suicide rate, especially amongst teenagers and school pupils?
Well, I think if we look at the fact that, one suicide is one too many, but 40 certainly is alarming. It's also showing the situation out there being very dire, where children are feeling totally helpless, hopeless, powerless. They feel trapped. They're sitting in the state of dysregulation, where it's this fight, flight, or freeze mode, and actually feeling that help is not near, that they cannot reach out for any kind of immediate support or intervention. So I think that is one of the challenges that we are currently faced with, where learners do not feel that they could actually receive intervention and support to certainly assist them through this crisis. However, I think we also need to applaud the Gauteng Department of Education, our MEC, our Honorable MEC Chilruane, who has certainly undertaken this, under his wing, and civil society organizations like SADC, Childline, Teddy Bear Foundation, NACCW are working on this in reaching out to learners to ensure that help is a call away, that help is near and they need not fear, because a lot of these children are faced with an escalation of anxiety, something that they cannot cope with. They're overwhelmed with it. And then we also find this mimicking copycat approach where they see one committing or completing suicide, then the next one feels that that's the answer to their problems. But also there's another facet to it, that they would be revered, recognized, remembered, should they complete suicide. So I think there are many things that we have to address here. This is a systemic issue. There are many challenges where we find that within the school structures, the educators are not equipped and they are not therapists. One cannot expect them to understand or recognize that a child is facing a crisis, the child is depressed and is more likely to resort to devastating consequences. So a lot of work needs to be done, a lot of prevention. One needs to be proactive, and we need to address this immediately with additional resources, with psychological support made available within the school structure, social workers, psychologists, healthcare professionals. Mental health is key for children's growth, development, and success in the academic situation.
Doc, when I spoke to Steve Mabona, the spokesperson of the Basic Education Department in the province, he also reiterated that alongside the partnerships, you've mentioned some of them yourselves included as the Teddy Bear Foundation, it's the parents' cooperation that's equally important in making sure that you get through to the children, whether it's a pupil who's a victim of suicide, not necessarily suicide, but bullying as an example, because we're trying to come up with preventative measures against suicide, right? So in a context of bullying, whether it's the victim that's being bullied, whether it's a bystander witnessing the bullying or the perpetrator themselves, each of these children have parents and guardians, right? And you equally need to work alongside them.
Absolutely. You've hit the nail on the head. This requires a holistic intervention, holistic, integrated, coordinated, and collaborative effort. So certainly we know parenting does not come with a parenting manual. It doesn't give you a step-by-step guideline on how to identify challenges or problems in children, how to manage situations like bullying, the cyberbullying, how to manage depression. So a lot of positive parenting programs are critical, effective communicating techniques for parents. So working on a multi-level, working with parents, working with the learners, working with peer support structures, working with educators, working with the psychological social work service support structures. So across the spectrum, we all need to put our shoulders together, and we need to work out and reach out to the children before we lose another life.
Yeah. I want to just, focus on, a child that is perhaps contemplating suicide here, Doc, and perhaps assist us in how we can perhaps, spot some symptoms, some signs. You did mention earlier on, rightfully so, that most of our teachers are not necessarily equipped to handle situations where, they can spot if a child is not mentally, stable, whether they're contemplating suicide. Some teachers may think, you're not cooperating in class, you're not participating, you're being naughty, that, requires you to be reprimanded or disciplined. But there might be a bigger issue here, because we know these are pupils that are not often empowered or encouraged to speak out because they don't want further re-victimization or shame amongst their peers. So as teachers, as adults, as parents, as community members, how can we see and spot a child that may be suicidal?
Well, I think it's important to look at the telltale signs in context, not in isolation. Certainly a child who is demonstrating sudden changes in behavior, a child that was usually more jovial, outspoken, participated actively within the classroom setting, suddenly becomes withdrawn, isolated, refuses to engage in activities or sports or things that the child enjoyed previously, a child who may stay out of school regularly, a child who may sleep a lot or may not, whose grades may plummet. Even children have usually sleeping disturbances where there might be, insomnia and either sleeping too much or sleeping too little. But children also becoming disruptive, disorderly, and not becoming aggressive. I think there are many signs that one needs to look at, even eating patterns changing. So these are some of the things. I always say the rule of thumb is to err on the side of caution. It's rather better to be neurotic around any behavior that one is concerned about than overlook it and refer it to the professional, seek consultation, refer to a mental health professional if an educator or a parent is not sure about the child's behavior. So overall, one needs to look at, my child is certainly behaving differently now, locking himself in the room, not participating, not eating, not sleeping, poor performance. I think these are things that one needs to take into consideration and seek professional help.
Yeah. Before I let you go, Dr. Shaheda, I mean, for, the young learners right now who may be contemplating a suicide, I mean, I was just saying to Steve that when there isn't enough support, suicide for that young person may be the only way out. When there are solutions, when there is help around them, they may think it's the only way out. But the unfortunate thing about that decision is that we can't bring back that life, right? What would be your messages of support and of encouragement to such young people who perhaps may see this, conversation? I know they're probably in school right now, but perhaps because they have access to, social media and phones, they may see our interview on YouTube, or their parents may talk to them right now. What may be your message right now to that young person thinking that suicide is the only way out of their current problem?
So something that we've just coined the phrase that help, have no fear, hope and help is near. And I think that's something to make available to every child, that the resources are available at the push of a button.
Yeah.
And within each and every school structure, there must be resources that are at the fingertips of children. So that is what we are contemplating and working on, that each and every child has access to immediate support when they're feeling conflicted, they're feeling desperate, that taking one's life is not the only way out. Hope is there, help is near and available.
And with those encouraging words, thank you so much, Doc, for speaking to us right here on Newslink. Dr. Shaheda Omar from the Teddy Bear Foundation, thank you so much for your time this morning.